My name is Michael Kassan, and I'm at the moment. So my journey began in an unusual spot for somebody in the media and advertising business. Interestingly enough, I began my career as a tax lawyer, and whilst I was in Los Angeles at that time, you know, the Beltway in Los Angeles includes the entertainment industry. So a fair amount of the work I did early in my career was working with the entertainment industry, but not as their contract lawyer, as their tax lawyer. So the good news was I was dealing with people who were making money because they had tax questions. So that was the beginning of my journey. My first stop away from practicing law was when I was fortunate to end up in the media business, but through the lens of home video. You know, and when I was in the home video business, what was interesting, I guess, along the road was I was president and chief operating officer. The chairman and chief executive officer of the video company was a gentleman who's sadly no longer with us, and his name was Jose Menendez. You might have heard of the Menendez murders. I worked for Jose Menendez, but not when he was murdered, thankfully, but a couple of years before. I think it's fair to say I've met a few interesting people in my life and times. And the good fortune then, which changed my life, was I was invited to become the chief operating officer of what was then the largest media agency in the world, International Media, by its founder and chairman, Dennis Holt, who was really a mentor to me and brought me into the business. So that was kind of how I ended up in the media business, starting as a tax lawyer. 15 months ago, I had a decision to make when I left my previous company, the company that I founded, and I had a decision to make. And the funny story is I sat down with a good friend of mine, John Miller. John said to me, "So Michael, what are you gonna do? You gonna consult?" And he wrote down consult. He said, "And are you still gonna do events and Cannes and CES and Possible?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "So you're gonna convene?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "And are you still gonna be doing merchant banking and diligence and M&A and family office investing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "So you're gonna co-invest?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And I looked at it and it said, consult, convene, and co-invest. I said, "That's probably a good name for the company. I should just call it 3C. Ergo, welcome to 3C Ventures, which is comprised of consulting, convening, and co-investing. That's what we do. We focus on those three verticals, if you will, and we do that where I'm very comfortable. It's a spot that I identified about 20 years ago, which is the intersection of marketing, media, advertising, entertainment, sports, and technology. And as I've said for 20 plus years, that's a very crowded and chaotic intersection. But I've always been a believer in chaos theory. When you can find chaos, you're going to find opportunity. And God knows there's chaos at that intersection. As you can imagine, I'm asked that question frequently relative to what's in store and what's over the horizon and what's the market like. We're in a unique moment, and it's not a good moment necessarily because, you know, we're all aware of the massive degrees of uncertainty in financial markets and, you know, in the moment with tariffs and you know, on again, off again, not really knowing which way we're going. And, you know, my grandmother used to have a great expression, which was, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up somewhere else. Right now, it feels like we don't know where we're going. And along the way, I had a few side hustles. One that became rather famous, I was the original franchisee of a company called El Pollo Loco. And those of you who live in the West Coast will certainly know El Pollo Loco. So along the way, I went from a tax lawyer to a chicken purveyor. And, you know, the joke is, people wondered if this was really the start of Breaking Bad because Pollos Hermanos and Gus met an untimely death. And when I met Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad, I said, "Look, Vince," I said, "you know, you had a good idea with Pollos Hermanos, but I was there at the beginning with Pollo Loco." And I said, the difference was we actually made marinade for the chicken. You were making crystal meth. It was a whole different story. But that was an interesting stop on the journey.